OECD forecasts Germany's GDP growth at 0.7% in 2025. Powell hints at cautious rate cuts as the US economy exceeds expectations. And Bitcoin surges above $100,000 for the first time. Hello and welcome, and right now we go live to the UN Security Council for the session discussing Syria.
The conduct of these countries and the selective approach they adopt, and I direct my speech towards one party, has pushed the OPCW in a maze of polarization and politicization, gravely undermining its credibility. Mr. President, Syria had fulfilled all its obligations according to the CWC and destroyed fully its stockpile of chemical weapons and production facilities. Syria does not have any kind of such weapons. Everything that is being promoted by the US and its Western allies otherwise is part of attempts for cheap political investment and manipulation of this file, using unprofessional and biased reports that were issued using a stick and carrot approach and that were prepared depending on open resources and allegations made by terrorist groups and their affiliates, and Western and intelligence agencies of their Western operators without any consideration for the standards of investigation stipulated by the Convention. We renew our demand to the Technical Secretariat to adopt an approach that is based on neutrality, objectivity, and professionalism in line with its specific mandate according to the Chemical Weapons Convention, to allow the resolution of all pending matters as soon as possible and stop the political manipulation of this file and close it permanently. Mr. President, you have to remember always that political disagreement with any country does not mean or allow that al-Nusra Front, the terrorist group, or those who lead them, its leader, Abu Muhammad al-Julani, does not allow them to control the city of Aleppo that is rich culturally. It's rich with its religious diversity, racial diversity, and to cause suffering to its people and transform it into a repeated model of other cities that were under the control of terrorist groups affiliated with Al-Qaeda. This is very important issues that you always need to remember. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Thank you. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, we welcome the presence of Ms. Nakamitsu, UN High Representative for Disarmament Affairs, at today's briefing. Mr. President, on this agenda item, I wish to make 3 points. First, as a responsible state party to the Chemical Weapon Convention and as a nation that has suffered deeply from chemical weapons, the Islamic Republic of Iran unequivocally condemns the use of chemical weapons by anyone, anywhere, and under any circumstances. Iran, as an active member of the OPCW, underlines the essential importance of ensuring the independence, impartial, and professional work of the OPCW. We call for the full, effective, and non-discriminatory implementation of the Convention Iran will spare nor fail to realize objective of this vital instrument. Second, the Syrian Arab Republic has complied with its obligation under the convention, having destroyed.
We were watching live the Security Council session regarding Syria. We heard from the Syrian representative to the Security Council, and also speaking now was the Iranian representative in the Security Council concerning the situation in Syria, specifically in the northern parts of Syria. And now to the Economic Bulletin, where we present comprehensive coverage and expert insights on the latest economic trends and developments. Stay with us. We start off with Europe, where the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development has lowered its economic growth forecast for Germany, despite projecting global economic growth of 3.3% next year. In a recently published report, the OECD stated that Germany's GDP is expected to grow by only 0.7% in 2025, following stagnant growth this year. Growth is anticipated to recover in 2026, with the German economy forecasted to expand by 1.2%. The revised projections highlight the challenges facing Germany's economy, coming less than 3 months after the OECD had predicted a 1% growth rate for 2025. The British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has stated that his government's progress in boosting the economy should be judged by using data on household disposable income and GDP per capita over the 5-year Parliament. A document setting out Starmer's plans revealed that the government would aim for the fastest economic growth per capita in the group of 7 advanced economies, which represents a dilution of what was previously a pledge. It also promised to deliver higher living standards across every region of the UK by the end of the parliamentary term.
And even the projects we do approve are fought tooth and nail and tooth, until you end up with the absurd spectacle of a £100 million bat tunnel holding up the country's single biggest infrastructure project, driving up taxes and the cost of living beyond belief. And I tell you now, this government will not accept this nonsense anymore.
A spokesperson for the EU executive said the economic impact of political turmoil in France on the broader European economy appears limited, although the European Commission is closely monitoring the situation. Investor demand for a risk premium to hold French debt instead of German bonds declined following the anticipated collapse of the French government. This week, far-right and left-wing lawmakers united to support a no-confidence motion against Prime Minister Michel Barnier. Analysts warned that France could face a prolonged economic downturn, potentially leading to a downgrade in sovereign creditworthiness and reduced economic growth. Italian state lender CDP and the African Development Bank have entered into a co-financing agreement worth €400 million to support climate finance, sustainable agriculture, education and technical assistance. The agreement, which was finalized during the AFDB's Africa Investment Forum in Rabat, is part of Italy's €6 billion Mattei plan aimed at boosting development in Africa. According to AFDB's Vice President for Finance, the goal is to mobilize capital across the continent by leveraging African funds and accelerating equity, as explained by the head of CDP's International Cooperation and Development Finance Directorate. Denmark has revised its economic growth outlook upwards, citing the expansion of the pharmaceutical industry, particularly the success of weight loss drug maker Novo Nordisk. The Danish Economy Ministry announced that GDP for 2024 is now projected to grow by 3%, up from an earlier forecast of 1.9%, while the projection for 2025 has been increased to 2.9% from 2.2%. The ministry highlighted that the growth is primarily driven by the production and exports within the pharmaceutical sector. Looking further ahead, the ministry expects GDP growth to slow to 1.7% by 2026. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen arrived in Uruguay to finalize a long-awaited trade deal between the EU and the Mercosur bloc, which includes Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay and Bolivia. The agreement, 20 years in the making, would create a transatlantic market of around 700 million people. Von der Leyen emphasized that the finish line was in sight, urging for continued efforts to secure what would become one of the largest global trade partnerships. Moving to North America, statistics in Canada says that the country's trade deficit widened in October to 924 million Canadian dollars. Canada's surplus with the US dropped to its lowest point of the year at 6.17 billion Canadian dollars. Exports to the US fell 2.8% monthly and 8% annually, while imports from the US rose 1.1% monthly and 1.9% yearly. In China, a diplomat has said that China has imposed a full tariff exemption for developing African countries, coinciding with US President Joe Biden's visit to Angola. The move highlights the growing competition between China and the US for influence in Africa. Beijing had previously lent billions of dollars to African nations through its Belt and Road Initiative, but scaled back its lending significantly in 2019. Biden, on his first trip to Africa, pledged that the US would fully engage in Africa. South Korea's economy grew 0.1% in the third quarter as revised central bank data remained unchanged from advanced estimates issued in October. On an annual basis, gross domestic product was 1.5% higher in the July-September quarter, slower than the 2.3% rather, growth logged in the second quarter. The Saudi Public Investment Fund and BP France assurance expert have signed a memorandum of understanding providing up to $10 billion in financing to PIF and PIF portfolio companies over 5 years. The agreement covers a 5-year period and aims to boost mutual collaboration focused on projects supporting Saudi Vision 2030. The General Director of BPI France emphasized the agreement's role in boosting trade and forging partnerships. According to CC data, cryptocurrency trading surged to a record high of over $10 trillion in November, doubling from the previous month. This increase was fueled by optimism for a more favorable regulatory environment under President-elect Donald Trump. Bitcoin rose by 38%, reaching an all-time high of nearly $100,000. Spot trading on centralized exchanges saw a 128% increase totaling $3.43 trillion, while derivatives trading grew by 89%, reaching $6.99 trillion. Bitcoin surged above $100,000 for the first time in the cryptocurrency's history. This came after President-elect Donald Trump chose crypto advocate Paul Atkins as his nominee to head the Securities and Exchange Commission. After the announcement, Bitcoin was at an all-time high of $103,619, a surge about 6%.
Bitcoin has officially surged past the $100,000 mark, pushing its market capitalization above $2 trillion. This historic milestone coincides with U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's announcement of Paul Atkins as the new head of Securities and Exchange Commission, replacing Gary Gensler. Atkins, a former SEC commissioner, is known for his pro-business stance, fueling optimism for lighter crypto regulations. Analysts predict his leadership could simplify the approval for crypto-linked financial products, potentially spurring innovation in the sector. The milestone also highlights Bitcoin's growing acceptance as a digital store of value, akin to gold. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell reiterated this comparison, suggesting Bitcoin's appeal lies more in its role as a speculative asset rather than a currency. Institutional support remains a key driver. With significant inflows into Bitcoin exchange-traded funds and continued accumulation by corporate giants like MicroStrategy, experts believe this backing will sustain Bitcoin's upward momentum, with projections hinting at potential levels of $125,000 or more. While regulatory clarity under Atkins could make the U.S. a global crypto hub, critics warn of the risks tied to looser oversight.
Joining us from Beirut is economist Rudy Shoushani to discuss the latest developments related to Bitcoin and the impact of Paul Atkins' appointment on the cryptocurrency market. Welcome to Q News. Now, why would Bitcoin reach these numbers at these times? Rudy, can you hear me?
The election of Trump from the beginning, while his campaign, and then now being elected, he's a favorable president with favorable, dreams to make America great again. America make great again is not just about, the powers, the superpowers. It's also about re-innovating the financial part. And we've seen him during his campaign using cryptocurrencies to fund part of his campaign and to sell part of NFTs and non-fungible tokens and so on and so on. Now, with what's happened lately is Gary Gensler, which is today the head of SEC exchanges, and he is not in favor of such moving so fast into the cryptocurrency, even though this is a 15 years old technology. So he was very bad in terms of making a black and white decision, even if Bitcoin commodity or it's a security. He couldn't decide, So that brought a lot of problems in the economical situation of the US, where if you are into innovating a new product on cryptocurrency, technically either you get fined or you will be jailed, or you have to pass a lengthy process of regulation. And this is what we've seen with XRP. They've passed more than 10 years regulation trying to get them certified and so on. And this barely happened. So now with Gary Gensler being gone and then being replaced by Paul Atkins, who is a very favorable person in terms of cryptocurrencies, he will be adopting less structure, less, more risk averse rather than risk careful, trying to be on the innovation side of regulation itself. This brings a whole power to make America great again. And then the whole crypto industry, it's coming from the US as far as world biggest economy of crypto. So now it will be actually 10x, 20x, 30x, 100x in terms of innovation perspective. If companies are innovating and they will be funding the US, and then we will be having cryptocurrencies reserves. So imagine what's going to happen with the innovation in terms of cryptocurrency. And we witnessed it over the last 24 hours with his assignment that the market has went up around 7%, and it's going to keep on going.
Well, let's try to imagine what you're trying to say here. If you can expand on that, because I want to ask the question that's actually been it's on the screen right now. Has Bitcoin finally become a true digital asset? It's not just as a digital asset, but has it actually become an asset overall?
You see, the whole thing is defining, is it an asset or is it a commodity or so on? That was the biggest discussion. Now, for me, personally, I find it as an asset. I find it as, I can trade with it. I can do many things with it. That's on a personal side, but the regulators have the right, or they are actually deciding on this. So if they change the category, that is gonna be the thing that's gonna empower the whole Bitcoin economies. So if you go to other regulated other countries that has already regulated the cryptocurrencies, they have really defined what is cryptocurrency and how you can really, invest in or trade in or actually use it as money. So once clarity is there, defining if it's a commodity or it's an asset or it's that makes it even better in terms of transacting. So going to the future, yes, for me, I think they will go this way, and it will become part of the economy itself, from reserves to investing to hedge funds to everything you will actually be dealing with as part of new financial instruments. And we've seen with the rise of ETFs in terms of BlackRock. I think BlackRock has already almost 10-month or 11-month now head start into creating new products. So imagine what's going to happen, I would say, within the next 2 months also in terms of that innovation, and then going forward when Trump goes in full action.
But what are your concerns regarding all of this, if you have any?
Yeah, I personally do have any. I do have not just one, more than one, because we're going into a new economy. It's a new thing. We never tested it before. So we're jumping into something with all of the studies, with all of the simulations and whatever, we have done. This is the first time we go into a virtual economy, in the end of the day, it is a virtual economy. What will happen if the market crash? What will happen if market crash? And I'm not talking going back to 90,000, going back to 30,000, going back to 20,000. In terms of economy, will this be, affected? We're looking at Salvador. We're trying to learn still from El Salvador, but we still didn't learn much because the use cases and so on. So we really have to wait. We have to regulate, we have to drive innovation, but in the same time, we have to be careful so it doesn't really affect that fluctuation in the market where, if something happens and everybody starts liquidating, that's going to be the biggest catastrophe ever happening on Earth. So imagine this scenario happening. So that's why we need also the users, the adoption, and so many other things to come in hand, line in line with this innovation to be
right.
People,
I want to ask about this point because unfortunately I'm out of time here. However, this part in trying to get the information out, trying to explain to the people how to use this virtual asset and how to invest in it. Do you think it's a challenge, and how could we actually do that?
So far, it has been challenged. Everything related to cryptocurrencies or Web3 has been not the best user experience, but we're going there. There's a lot of innovation. Mm-hmm. We have so far 500 million active wallets that are involved. Okay, so I think the next run is 1 billion. So, which is going to happen within the next few months. So imagine what's going to happen with that. We're talking about around 15-20% of the world population mm-hmm. that are, holding a cryptocurrency. But remember, there's 2 billion people that are unbanked. And those are the people that will benefit even more
right.
from the bank.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Rudi Shushani, for your insights.
Thank you.
Moving to the US, the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell, has stated that the economy is performing better than the central bank had anticipated in September when it began reducing interest rates. He suggested that the stronger than expected economic performance could support a more gradual pace of future rate cuts. Powell emphasized that the U.S. economy is in strong shape, with fewer downside risks in the labor market, stronger than expected growth, and slightly higher inflation. He noted that these positive developments would allow the Federal Reserve to be more cautious as it works to find a neutral interest rate.
Maximum employment and price stability. We don't guess, we don't speculate.
Moreover, the number of Americans filing new unemployment claims rose by 9,000 to 224,000 for the week ending November 30, indicating a continued but moderate cooling of the labor market. Despite this, claims remain consistent with the steady job growth, signaling a strong rebound in November's non-farm payrolls, likely increasing by 200,000 jobs after a modest 12,000 rise in October. Claims remain consistent with steady job growth, signaling a strong rebound in November's non-farm payrolls following disruptions caused by hurricanes Helene and Milton, as well as strikes by Boeing. That's all for now. Here's a roundup of today's headlines. OECD forecasts Germany's GDP growth at 0.7% in 2025. Powell hints at cautious rate cuts as the US economy exceeds expectations. And Bitcoin surges above $100,000 for the first time. Stay connected for more news and updates on Qnews.